Welcome back. Today I'm going to be explaining everything you need to know to charge the Cadillac Lyriq. We're going to go over the different levels of charging, how long it takes to charge, and even how you can charge the Lyriq on Tesla charging stations. So if you're a Lyriq owner, interested in buying one, or just thinking about getting an EV and want to learn a little bit more about charging, this is the video for you. So first, let's briefly talk about the Lyriq. Lyriq's Cadillac's first all-electric vehicle. And this is a brand that has vowed to be 100% electric by 2030. That's 7 years from now. They're only going to be selling electric vehicles. So the transition is going to happen really quickly. This is a really important vehicle for the brand because it's their first all-electric car. And if this kind of flops, what's that saying about the future of the Cadillac brand that's going to be all electric? In any event, it has a 102 kilowatt hour battery pack. That's important when we talk about electric vehicles. That's how big the battery is, which kind of dictates how far it will go, that and the efficiency of the vehicle. But since we're talking about charging, the size of the battery pack is very important. So it's got a 102 kilowatt hour battery pack. It comes in a rear-wheel drive version and an all-wheel drive version. The rear-wheel drive version has an EPA range rating of 312 miles. The all-wheel drive version is slightly less. That comes in at 307 miles. So both versions of this vehicle go more than 300 miles. Well, at least that's their EPA range rating. Your range will vary throughout the year depending on driving conditions and ambient temperature, as will charging slightly. Not as much as the rain does, but charging does vary slightly depending on how cold or warm the battery pack is. So unlike refueling gasoline and diesel vehicles, there's a lot of nuances to electric vehicle charging. There's different types of connectors, there's different levels of charging, and all this is going to affect how quickly the vehicle charges. So before we really get into Lyriq specific content, let's talk about the different levels of charging, and this goes for all electric vehicles, just so we have that foundation to work off of for the rest of the video. So next up, let's talk connectors, and this has gotten complicated by the recent news that the industry here in North America is basically going to transition away from the connectors that we're using today and use the connector that Tesla developed and used. It's called the North American Charging Standard, or NACS. This is it right here. What the Lyriq and all vehicles that are sold in North America, all electric vehicles sold in North America except for Tesla, use these two connectors right here. This is called the J1772, and this is the connector that you use for level 1 and level 2 charging. This is the CCS connector, and this is what's used for DC fast charging. Now you can tell it looks very similar on the top because this is the CCS, which is called Combined Charging System, because it combines a J1772 connector, which you can see up top here, with two DC fast charging pins on the bottom. So the way it works now is, other than Tesla vehicles, all other electric vehicles, including the Lyriq, has two different connectors they use, one for AC charging and one for DC fast charging. With the Tesla or NACS connector, this is all you need. And it's part of the reason why the whole industry is going to transition to it. It's lighter, it's more elegant, and you only need this one connector to charge on AC and DC. It's just a better system, so we're beginning a transition to that. Now in 2025, General Motors has announced all of their new electric vehicles is going to have this connector on it. But right now it's 2023, and in 2023 and 2024 they won't. They're going to have the charge port for these two connectors, J1772 and CCS combo. Now in next year, in 2024, General Motors is going to sell an adapter that's going to allow Lyriq and all of their electric vehicle brands to charge on Tesla superchargers. But currently you don't have access to Tesla superchargers. Only a couple that Tesla installed this, they call it the Magic Dock, and it's a built-in adapter, and it lets CCS-equipped cars charge on Tesla superchargers. But there's only like 15 of them in the whole country, and we don't know at what rate Tesla's going to start installing them. So the good thing is, starting next year, you'll be able to get an adapter and charge your Lyriq at more than 12,000 Tesla superchargers. Now, for now, the Lyriq can charge on Tesla destination chargers. Those are the lower powered AC charging stations that are actually thousands of them around the country. Tesla installs them at destinations like hotels, bed and breakfasts, all sporting events, golf courses, wineries, all different type of destinations. They're called destination chargers. But to be able to use one of those, you need to get an adapter. It's a Tesla to J1772 adapter. There's a lot different ones out there on the market. There's small, elegant ones like this. There's larger ones with the cable here. They're priced anywhere between $150 and $350. And if you really want to use Tesla destination chargers, you have to pick up one of these adapters. And then basically what happens is the Tesla connector that'll be on the destination charge plugs into this. And now you can plug it into your Lyriq with the J1772. So for now, that's what we're stuck with. In about a year from now, GM is going to come out with an adapter that's going to look the opposite of this. This is actually a CCS to Tesla adapter. They're going to be selling a Tesla to CCS adapter. You'll be able to buy that and then have access to the Tesla supercharger network with your Lyriq. But for now, you can only charge the Lyriq on DC fast charging stations that have the CCS connector on them. Now, I will mention earlier that I said all the electric vehicles sold in North America currently use the CCS connector for DC fast charging. There's one that doesn't. It's the Nissan Leaf, but Nissan is phasing out the standard that they had previously used, a standard called CHAdeMO, but they're phasing that out. So I know I'll get comments in the video of this saying, oh, you forgot about the Leaf. It's one electric vehicle, and that standard is being basically phased out, which eventually I think CCS will be long way down the road. But if you do get a Lyriq, you don't have to worry about not being able to charge it. There's going to be the adapters available, so you will be able to use an adapter to charge at Tesla stations as well as CCS DC fast charging stations. Basically, you'll have access to all the DC fast charging stations in North America once General Motors makes the Tesla adapter available. Now let's take a look at the standard charging equipment that comes with every Lyriq. This is called a dual voltage portable charger, or EVSE. The proper term for these are really EVSE. It's called electric vehicle supply equipment, but we call them chargers, and that's what people recognize them as, so that's why I continue to call them that. But just so you know, the proper term is actually EVSE. That's because the charger is actually built into the car. Every electric vehicle has what's called an onboard charger built into the car, and they have different power ratings. We're going to get into that a little bit later, but for now, we'll call these chargers because that's what people understand. This is the dual voltage portable charger. Now, what's that mean? It means that it can charge on either 120 volts or 240 volts. So it's a level 1/level 2 charger. You can charge from a regular household outlet. It has these two adapters here that dictates what you can plug into. This is the regular household outlet. As you can tell, it's a regular plug for any 3-prong household outlet. Take the adapter, you slide it in, you pop it in. Now it's good to plug into regular household outlet. Now, it will charge the Lyriq, but it's going to charge it very slowly, only at a rate of about 3 miles of range added for every hour of charging. So while, you know, it will work, and in a pinch, if you're on vacation somewhere and you drive and the car's parked in the driveway for 2 or 3 days while you're on the beach or skiing or whatever, you could leave it plugged in, you'll get some miles back. But understand, after 24 hours of charging on level 1 charging, you're probably only going to get about 75 to 80 miles of range on the vehicle. So that's a full day of charging. So while level 1 charging is okay in a pinch, it's probably not going to be your preferred method of charging your EV. It's nice and tight, which is good because you don't want water to get in there. So this is the level 2 240 volt outlet adapter. Let's plug that in. Now, when you plug that in, now you can plug this into a 240 volt outlet. This actually, the plug configuration here is a NEMA 1450 outlet, which is a very common outlet for electric vehicle charging. So what you could do is have an outlet installed in your garage, a 240 volt outlet, and use this to charge your Lyriq. And using the NEMA 1450 adapter, you can add about 20 to 25 miles of range per hour to the Lyriq, significantly more than the 120 volt adapter can, which is only 3 miles of range per hour. So, you're going to charge roughly 7 times faster using this adapter over this adapter. But even that's not going to be fast enough for many Lyriq owners. The Lyriq's available in 3 trims: Tech, Luxury, and Sport. The Tech trim comes standard with an 11.5 kilowatt onboard charger. I mentioned earlier the actual charger's built into the car. That means the Lyriq's limited to accepting 11.5 kilowatts when charging on AC power, level 1 and level 2. You can't charge faster than that. Even if you plug into a more powerful charger, it will limit it to 11.5 kilowatt. Now, you don't have to worry about using a more powerful charger. It won't hurt the car because the car will limit the power it takes in to 11.5 kilowatt. However, on the Luxury and the Sport trims, the Lyriq comes standard with an 80 amp onboard charger, and that's 19.2 kilowatts. So you go up from, this can deliver 7.7 kilowatts. The standard onboard charger is 11.5 kilowatts on the Tech trim, but then when you go to Luxury and Sport, it's 19.2 kilowatts you can accept. That's a lot more. So if you were to get a high-powered charger, you can charge the vehicle a lot faster. So what I'm going to do, rather than just explain it right here, let's take a look at a graphic that I made to show you all the different levels of AC charging and how fast it'll charge the Lyriq. Then you can decide what level of charging suits your needs best. Okay, so first let's go over level 1 charging with the portable standard charging cord. Now, if the Lyriq is set to accept only 8 amps, and we go over this later in the video, how to set the amp intake on level 1 charging. So if it's set at 8 amps, you're only going to get about 2 to 2.5 miles of range per hour of charging. And that's roughly 115 to 120 hours to fully charge the Lyriq from 0 all the way up to 100% charged. That's about 5 days. Now, if you set it to accept 12 amps, now you're going to get somewhere between 3 and 4 miles of range per hour, and it's going to take roughly 70 to 75 hours to fully charge the vehicle. Again, super long. It's good to have it in a pinch if you really need to add some miles, but level 1 charging isn't going to be what most Lyriq owners are going to use to charge their vehicle regularly. They're going to opt for level 2 AC charging, which is 240 volts. Now, if you use the portable charger that comes with the vehicle with the NEMA 1450 adapter, you can charge at 32 amps. You're going to add somewhere between 20 and 25 miles of range per hour, and it'll take about 15 hours to fully recharge the vehicle. Now, understand, you don't pull into your garage every night with the battery completely empty. If you did, it would take 15 hours, but you really only have to replenish what you use that day. So in most instances, even using 32 amp charger, you're going to be fully charged by the morning. Now, if you get a 48 amp charger, you can add between 30 and 35 miles of range per hour, and it would take about 10 hours to completely charge a Lyriq that had a fully drained battery. Now, if you do have the 80 amp charger option on the Lyriq, and you pair it with an 80 amp charger, you can add between 50 and 55 miles of range per hour, and you'll fully recharge a Lyriq from a completely dead battery to 100% charged in about 6 hours. Now let's talk about DC fast chargers. DC fast charging you typically will do away from home or work. That's level 1 and level 2 AC charging. You really can't install a DC fast charger at your home. It would be cost prohibitive. There are many tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes more than $100,000. And the power demand that the units need to charge the vehicle really quickly just isn't available for most residential places. I know a lot of people ask about, can I put a DC fast charger in my house? It would cost more than the Lyriq to do that if your utility would even allow you to have that kind of power delivered at your house. But DC fast chargers are used to enable long distance traveling. They're typically installed along major corridors and highways. There's a lot of different networks out there that have DC fast chargers. So I urge people to take a look and see your area, where you typically travel. There's apps where you can find what networks are in that area. And you want to typically join the networks ahead of time and have their app installed, because while it's possible to just pull up and pull out a credit card and initiate a charging session, when you do that, there's likely to have problems. The credit card readers don't work, the charger doesn't interface properly. It works so much better if you already have joined the network. So when you show up, you just plug in, swipe start to charge, and the vehicle will charge. So I urge you to take a look at some of the popular apps that are out there, like PlugShare and ChargeWay. They tell you what chargers are in the area, what networks, so you can see what network you want to join. You probably want to join Electrify America and EVgo. Those are the two biggest national DC fast charging networks, but there's other networks that are out there, and they're regional. So depending on where you live, you might need to join a different network in order to really have access to the chargers in your area. The thing about DC fast charging is it works a little bit differently than AC charging. With AC charging, when you plug in, and let's say you use the portable charger on the NEMA 1450 outlet, you're going to get 7.7 kilowatts, and it's going to pretty much charge at the steady rate the whole way, and at the very end drop off. With DC fast charging, the amount of power that goes into the car varies, and it varies greatly. You typically get the fastest charging when the battery is at a very low state of charge. And General Motors says that with the Lyriq, you can get about 77 miles of range in about 10 minutes of charging. But that depends when you plug in. If you plug in at like 70% charged, you won't get nearly that much power. You really need to be at a low state of charge when you plug in to get the most power. I've been doing some testing with the Lyriq as far as how quickly it charges to charge the vehicle from, say, 10% up to about 80%. After 80% charged, all electric vehicles really slow down their charging rate. They accept a lot of power up to that point, and it's the way the batteries work. They can't accept a lot of power when they're at a high state of charge, so the charging slows down. If you are charging at a DC fast charger on a long road trip, you pretty much want to unplug at 80% and then keep moving, unless you absolutely need the extra range to get to your destination or the next charging station, because it'll probably take longer to charge the Lyriq from 80% to 100% than it did to charge it from 10% to 80%. So here you're getting 70% of the battery faster than you're getting 20% of the battery. So that's one thing to keep in mind. You don't want to hang out at a DC fast charger above 80% unless you really need to, or you're just killing time and you're shopping or something and the charger's in the shopping mall parking lot. Okay, so let's talk about how quickly the Lyriq will charge on a DC fast charger. There's various power levels of DC fast chargers like AC charging, and it depends on where you are and where you live. Some areas have a lot of high power DC fast chargers, some don't. So let's take a quick look at a graphic that I made that shows about how quickly you can recharge the Lyriq depending on the power output of the DC fast charger. Okay, so before we begin, I just want to make sure you understand these are estimates based on my experience. I've had a lot of chances to DC fast charge the Lyriq on DC fast chargers that have different power levels. And from my experience, this is what I have observed. Now, I found out just today, General Motors announced that they're going to push out a over-the-air update for the Lyriq that will improve its charging times. They haven't said exactly how much, so we may actually have better charging times than what I've observed over the course of the last couple of weeks, but I can only speak to what I've observed. So let's take a look at that. When charging on a 50 kilowatt DC fast charger, it took me about an hour and 40 minutes to charge the vehicle from 10% to 80%. I use 10% to 80% because that's kind of a benchmark what most electric vehicle manufacturers talk about when they talk about how fast their EVs charge. Now, GM doesn't offer 10 to 80% charging times for any of their EVs. What they do for the Lyriq is give you a very short charging clip. They say you could add up to 77 miles in 10 minutes of charging, but they don't say that you have to plug in at a very low state of charge, and the temperature of the battery pack has to be ideal for that to happen. GM needs to do a better job in explaining charging speeds of their electric vehicles, in my opinion. Okay, so let's get back to this. On a 100 kilowatt DC fast charger, it takes about 55 minutes. On a 150 kilowatt DC fast charger, 2 minutes less, about 53 minutes. And on a 350 kilowatt DC fast charger, and I've done this numerous times, about 5 times now, I'm averaging about 48 minutes for the Lyriq to charge from 10% to 80%. That's not really great, especially on your road trip. Most EVs today can get that 10 to 80% DC fast charge in somewhere around 30 minutes. You want it to be in about a half an hour or less, so close to 50 minutes for 70% of your battery pack is not good. And that's disappointing because the Lyriq does have a maximum DC fast charge rate of 190 kilowatts. That's a good number, so you would think it would charge quicker. The problem is with the charging curve. It's got a very bad charging curve. It doesn't hold maximum power for very long. Hopefully the software update corrects some of that, and as soon as I can get my hands on another Lyriq, I will test it out, and I'll do a comparison video to show the new software versus the old software. But for now, you can check out my other videos that I have posted here on State of Charge that do deep sea fast charging deep dives, and I publish all my charts and graphs to show you just how good or bad the Lyriq DC fast charges. Pro tip for DC fast charging. Now, the Cadillac Lyriq, as well as some other electric vehicles, allow you to precondition the battery when you're going to DC fast charge. Preconditioning means warming or cooling the battery so that it's at the optimal temperature when you arrive at the DC fast charger. And when you're DC fast charging your vehicle, the battery temperature plays a big role. It will dictate how much power the car can take in and charge the battery. When you're charging at home on level 1 or level 2, battery temperature really doesn't play that much of a role unless it's extremely cold or extremely hot. So for most instances, you don't have to really worry about battery temperature when you're charging at home. But with DC fast charging, if the battery is too hot or too cold, it will take in less power than it can. So what the Lyriq does is it'll precondition the battery for you, warm it or cool it. And it does it automatically as long as you set in your navigation system a DC fast charger as your destination. Then the vehicle knows you're going to charge at a DC fast charger, and it'll automatically turn on battery preconditioning. Now, you could also manually turn it on if you know you're going to a DC fast charger and you don't enter it in your navigation system. Let's say you know where it is, you don't need directions. You can manually turn it on. Now, the one thing I will say is it does use energy while you're doing that. So if you are stretching your range, if you think you might have trouble making it to the charging station because you're very low state of charge, and you enter it in your navigation and it automatically turns on, you can turn it off. The vehicle will let you turn off battery preconditioning. And all that'll mean is you'll end up staying at the DC fast charger 5 or 6 minutes longer. It doesn't make that much of a difference in the time. It'll charge quicker if the battery is at the right temperature, but it's not that much of a difference where you should really stress over it, unless you're in a big rush, you're on a long road trip, and you really want to unplug and move on as fast as possible. Don't get me wrong, it's a good practice to use, but I also don't want people to over stress about their battery temperature. If you are at the right optimal battery temperature, you will charge a little bit quicker, but it's not like you're going to be there an extra hour if you don't warm the battery or cool it up. Again, this is in normal situations. If you live in some place in Canada where it gets to negative 30 degrees, then it becomes a lot more important to precondition the battery when you arrive at a DC fast charger. Then it could take an hour longer. But for most people, it's only going to make the difference in 5 or 6 minutes on your charging stop. But hey, if you can wait 5 or 6 minutes less, you might as well use the battery preconditioning feature. It's a good feature that the Lyriq has. The Lyriq's navigation system also shows you where there's charging stations, and it lists them by their power output. So you could know if you're going to a slow level 2 charging station, a fast DC fast charger, or a very fast DC fast charger. Very useful when you're on a long trip. You also can use the Google voice integration to just say, "Hey Google, find me a charging station," and it will automatically find the nearest charging stations and give you a list of the charging stations that are out there. The Lyriq has a charge status indicator light on the center of the dashboard, right in front of the windshield. If it's blinking green, the vehicle's actively charging. If it's a solid green, it's completed charging and shut off. And if it's blinking blue, that means the vehicle's plugged in and ready to charge, but you've set an advanced charging schedule, so it's not actively charging yet. Now let's hop in the Lyriq and take a look at some of the advanced charge settings in the infotainment system. To get to the charge settings, you first tap the home button on the bottom and then the charging icon. From there you can set the Lyriq to charge now or to charge later. When charge now is selected, the vehicle will charge as soon as you plug it in. This is the setting that most Lyriq owners will use unless you have a time of use electricity plan and want to take advantage of lower cost off-peak electricity rates, or if you want to time it so that the vehicle finishes charging right before you leave in the morning, and that way the battery's nice and warm, and you could also set preconditioning from there so the cabin would be nice and warm. And we'll take a look at that next. From here you can also set the maximum charging level. It's best policy to only charge your EV to about 80 or 85% for daily charging because it's better for the battery. However, on the days where you think you need the extra range, don't be afraid to charge to 100%. It's not going to hurt your battery. You just shouldn't charge to 100% every time you charge. Now, if you do want to delay the charging, you can select charge later and set the time you want the vehicle to be finished charging. Please note, this isn't the time that you want the vehicle to start charging. It's the time when you want the Lyriq to be finished charging because you're going to leave. Now, the car will determine when it needs to start charging in order to be finished by the time you've selected. From here, you can also change the target state of charge, and additionally, you can choose to precondition the cabin so the Lyriq will be nice and warm or cool when it finishes charging right before you hop in it to begin your journey. If you want to set a schedule for delayed charging, you can do so by tagging the calendar icon on the left. And from there, you can set a schedule for every day, so the Lyriq automatically follows the delayed charging schedule when you're charging from home. You can also set your target state of charge level, as well as set cabin preconditioning for each individual day. And finally, let's tag the settings icon on the left. First, we'll look at the DC fast charge battery conditioning. As I explained before, the Lyriq will automatically condition the battery for fast charging when you select a DC fast charger as your destination in the navigation system. But you can also turn it on manually, and this is where you do it. This is also where you stop battery conditioning if you don't want the vehicle to use the extra energy to heat or cool the battery for faster charging. Next up, let's take a look at the charging notifications you can select to turn on or off. You can have the Lyriq send you notifications to alert you of your charging status, let you know if someone's unplugged you, which by the way can't happen if the vehicle is locked because that also locks the connector to the charge port. And also there's a notification to alert you if the charger stops delivering power to your vehicle. Now let's look at the home charge location settings. You would set this location if you plan to use a charging schedule. That's because the vehicle will only use the charging schedule when you plug in at this specific location. And it doesn't have to be your home, although that's where it most likely will be. Some people charge exclusively at their workplace, and they would want the vehicle to follow a charging schedule there. In that case, you'd set your work address as the home charge location. The scheduled charging only works at this specific location for a reason. That's because when you're at public charging stations, let's say you're on a road trip, you don't want the vehicle to follow a charging schedule, and you don't have to keep going in and telling it to start the schedule, stop the schedule. So the way this works is if you're at home, you'll always follow the schedule. But when you're on the road charging somewhere in public, the vehicle will always charge immediately. That's a really convenient feature, and it's good that the Lyriq has it set up that way. Okay, and finally, let's go over the charging equipment settings. From here, you can select AC high power, that's level 2 240 volt charging that I explained earlier in the video. With that, you don't need to set the amount of power the vehicle will take in because the Lyriq will communicate with the charger and determine the maximum amount of power the charger can provide and the Lyriq can accept. But for AC standard power or 120 volt level 1 charging, you need to select how much power you want the Lyriq to accept. This is a safety measure. To make sure you don't overdraw the low-powered household outlet that you're charging from. The charging cord will be set to accept only 8 amps. This is very low power, and you'll barely get 2 miles of range for every hour of charging. Setting the Lyriq to accept the full 12 amps that most circuits should be able to provide will add about 3 miles of range per hour of charging. I explained earlier in the video that level 1 charging is very slow, and that goes for even at the full 12 amps. And most Lyriq owners will only use level 1 charging in a pinch. But this setting is important if you're plugging into a circuit that you're unfamiliar with and you aren't sure if you're going to overdraw the circuit and trip the breaker. In that case, it might make sense to lower the charging draw down to 8 amps. Next up, let's talk about plugging in. The Lyriq's charge port is in the front left fender of the vehicle, and you open it up by pressing the Cadillac logo here. It's automated, it opens up, and then you just simply put the J1772 connector in. You want to make sure you hear that lock. Now, wait a second, you hear that beep? That means that the vehicle has started charging. If you don't hear that beep, there's some issue and it's not charging. Now, if you don't want that beep to be there, you can turn it off in the settings in the infotainment center. I think it's a good idea to have it on because it reminds you that the vehicle is charging. If you don't hear that beep, you know it's not charging. Now, when the vehicle is locked, you can't remove the connector. That's done so that if you're charging in public, somebody can't just walk up to your car and unplug you and stop your charging. But as long as the vehicle doors are unlocked, you simply depress this button on the top. That stops the charging. The vehicle stops charging. Now you can just pull out the J1772 connector. To close the charge port door, you press this button here and it closes automatically. If you forget to do that, let's say you unplug and just holster the connector, hop in the Lyriq and drive away, it's no problem. As soon as you turn the vehicle on, the Lyriq will close the charge port. So you won't drive away with the charge port open and expose it to elements if it's raining or something like that. Talking about raining, it's completely safe to charge your Lyriq or any electric vehicle in the rain or the snow. Totally safe, don't worry about it. I've been doing this for a long time. I've never heard of anybody having any problem in the rain or the snow. So there's a lot of redundancy with electric vehicle charging to make sure it's safe and you don't have to worry about that. Plugging in a CCS connector is just a little bit different. So let's take a look at that. Press the button, open the charge port. There's this plastic cover here that's covering the 2 DC fast charging pins on the bottom. You need to remove that plastic cover, but I urge you not to just remove it and leave it there because then you can't get this connector attached. I noticed that myself from charging. What you want to do is just take it, tuck it in on the side over here, and then it keeps it out of the way so you're clear to plug in the CCS combo connector. As an incentive to buy or lease a Lyriq, Cadillac offers your choice of either 2 years free unlimited charging on the EVgo network or a $1,500 credit towards the installation of your home charging equipment. Now, the decision on which better is going to vary person to person. Number one, you have to check to see if there's a lot of EVgo stations in your area. And there's some areas in the country that are very underserved by EVgo, and you might take that option only to find out you're never going to be able to use one of their charging stations. But even if they do have charging station in your area, in my opinion, you're much better off taking the $1,500 credit to your home charging equipment unless you think you're going to be doing a ton of road trips. Because while it might seem enticing, 2 years free unlimited charging, do you really want to sit at a public charging station for 45 minutes to an hour once or twice a week? I think your time is probably better spent doing other things. And that's one of the great things about electric vehicles. You recharge them typically when you're doing other things, like some people plug in at work and they recharge at work. Most people charge at home. You come home from night after work, you plug it in, eat dinner, you watch TV, you go to sleep, next day it's fully charged. So it's not really wasting any of your time. So personally, I think most people are served better by taking the $1,500 credit towards the home installation. And the company that General Motors has partnered with for home installation happens to be my channel sponsor, Q Merit. And part of the reason why I partnered with these guys was because they're really the specialists for electric vehicle charging equipment. They're a network of nationwide electric contractors that are specially trained in installing electric vehicle charging equipment. And why do you need special training? Well, electric vehicle charging equipment pulls more power for more continuous hours than anything else in your house. And we're starting to see now, if the equipment isn't installed correctly, there's arcing, there's small fires, and not to scare you, but this is scary stuff. If it's not done right, you could have problems. And one of the reasons why I partnered with Q Merit is because their installers are specialists in this. They know what to do. They use the right type of wire. They tighten all the connections to the proper torque, the manufacturer's torque. They always pull permits and get it inspected. It could possibly end up costing a couple $100 more, but you just got this beautiful $60,000, $70,000 Cadillac, and now you're trying to save $300 on home installation of your charging equipment, and you're going to put your family at risk. I don't think that's worth it. And with the $1,500 credit that you get, you're already $1,500 ahead of the game. So in many instances, I think that $1,500 credit will cover the full installation. It won't always, depending on your home's setup, but hey, you're $1,500 ahead. Go with the home charging installation. In my opinion, it's better than doing the 2 years unlimited charging on EVgo. I highly doubt if you'd end up using $1,500 worth of electricity on the EVgo network in 2 years driving with your Lyriq. Just on the few times that you need to use public charging infrastructure, just pay for it, and you're going to be way ahead of the game, believe me. All right, well, that's pretty much it on our Lyriq charging video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. I'll try to answer whatever questions I can. If I don't know the answer, I'll reach out to General Motors and see if I can get that answer for you. I hope you learned a little bit about how to charge this vehicle here. And as always, thanks for watching.